My Woman's History Virtual Interactive Museum. First up is the Hall of Cleopatra. Cleopatra, the Ascension of a Queen. Born in 70 or 69 BC, Cleopatra was a daughter of Ptolemy VIII, also known as Auletes, a descendant of Ptolemy I Soter, one of Alexander the Great's generals and the founder of the Ptolemaic line in Egypt. Her mother was believed to be Cleopatra V, Tryphania, the king's wife. In 51 BC, upon the natural death of Auletes, the Egyptian throne passed to 18-year-old Cleopatra and her 10-year-old brother Ptolemy VIII. The rule of Cleopatra. Soon after the siblings' ascension to the throne, Ptolemy's advisors acted against Cleopatra, who was forced to flee Egypt for Syria in 49 BC. She raised an army of mercenaries and returned the following year to face her brother's forces in a civil war at Pelusium, on Egypt's eastern border. Next, we have Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc, early life. Born around 1412, Jeanne d'Arc was daughter of tenant farmer Jacques d'Arc from the village of Domremy in northeastern France. A peace treaty in 1420 disinherited the French crown prince Charles of Valois amid accusations of his illegitimacy, and King Henry V was made ruler of both England and France. Along with its French allies, England occupied much of northern France, and many in Joan's village, Domremy, were forced to abandon their homes under threat of invasion. Joan of Arc. In May 1428, Joan made her way to Vaucluse, a nearby stronghold of those loyal to Charles. Initially rejected by the local magistrate Robert de Boudecourt, she persisted, attracting a small band of followers who believed her claims to be the Virgin who was destined to save France. Joan cropped her hair and dressed in men's clothes to make the 11-day journey across enemy territory to the Crown Prince's palace. Joan promised Charles she would see him crowned at Reims, the traditional site of French royal investiture, and asked him to give her an army to lead to Orleans. Charles granted her request, and Joan set off to fend off the siege of Orleans in March of 1429, dressed in white armor and riding a horse. Joan led several French assaults against them, driving the Anglo-Burgundians from their bastion and forcing their retreat across the Loire River. Next, we have Wilma Rudolph. Wilma Rudolph, running the race. Wilma Glodian Rudolph was born on June 23, 1940, in St. Bethlehem, Tennessee. As one of 22 children, she was constantly surrounded by support and care, which she needed given her poor health. Rudolph survived bouts of polio and scarlet fever. At the age of 11, Rudolph's mother quickly discovered her playing basketball outside. She quickly turned to sports, becoming a natural athlete. She was nominated as All-American in basketball during high school. She won 3 gold medals and broke at least 3 world records. Rudolph became the first American woman to win 3 gold medals in track and field in the same Olympic game. Next, we have Diana, Princess of Wales. The early life of Diana. Diana was born on July 1, 1961, to Edward John Spencer and his wife Frances. At the time of her birth, in Britain's peerage system, her father had the title of Viscount Althorp. Her parents were divorced in 1969 when she was 8, and her father won sole custody. In 1975, when Diana was 14, her father inherited the title of Earl from his own father, who passed away that year. The title has been awarded since 1765, as the Spencers have been wealthy landowners in England for centuries. The wedding of Princess Diana. Her family rented Park House, an estate owned by Queen Elizabeth II, Charles's mother. Although she lost touch with Charles as a result of spending much of her youth attending prestigious boarding schools, Diana became reacquainted with Prince Charles after moving to London to live in 1978. In the capital, she initially worked as a nanny before taking a job as a kindergarten teacher at the Young England School. The courtship of Charles and Diana lasted several years before they were married at St. Paul's Cathedral in London on July 29, 1981. With the wedding, Diana was granted the title Princess of Wales. Princess of Wales supported causes. Diana, who had developed an interest in music and fashion as a child, quickly became a global icon of popular culture as she developed relationships with a number of entertainment personalities, including singers George Michael and Elton John. She was also admired because she used her fame to raise public awareness and charitable funds for issues that mattered to her. As a former teacher, she was a lifelong advocate for children and supported efforts to abolish the use of landmines. Finally, we have Jane Austen. Jane Austen, the author behind the bestsellers. The seventh child and second daughter of Cassandra and George Austen, Jane Austen was born in December 16, 1775 at Steventon, Hertfordshire, England. Austen's parents were well-respected community members. Her father served as Oxford's educated rector for a nearby American peerage. Ever fascinated by the world of stories, Austen began to write in bound notebooks. In the 1790s, during her adolescence, she started to craft her own novels and wrote Love and Friendship, a distinct perspective that would eventually characterize much of her later writing. The next year, she wrote The History of England, a 34-page parody of historical writing that included illustrations drawn by Cassandra. Austen also started to write some of her future major works, the first called Eleanor and Marian, which would eventually be published as Sense and Sensibility. She began drafts of First Impressions, which would later be published as Pride and Prejudice, and Susan, later published as Northanger Abbey by Jane's brother Henry, following Austen's death.